Hey, welcome everyone to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. Hey, before we get started, I just want to give out a huge thank you to my really good friends, as well as my coaches, Dave and Susan Kenny with Emergo Academy. That's Emergo Academy. This just isn't another program. They certified me to be a crisis and recovery coach. But I'm going to tell you the main reason why I took it. And it was because it was all about the brain first approach. They're not like some therapists, which I'm not knocking them, but a lot of times they lead people in the direction that they think they need to go. With the brain first approach, literally you yourself lead you where you need to go. And it's just nice to be able to have someone to sit down with you and just ask you certain questions, and you actually start turning those gears of yours to figure out where life has taken you and why you're where you're at today. So if you guys are even not even interested in becoming a crisis and recovery coach, but interested in changing your life, I highly recommend checking out Emergo Academy. That's Emergo Academy.com. Check out their website, check them out. These guys are legit. They are out of Canada, but I tell you what, these are two amazing individuals who have helped so many people, including myself. So just want to say thank you to them. Thank you very much. And today, we have Brandon Yager on the show, and today we're going to be talking about your words can open doors to create clarity and conviction. So, Brandon, thank you so much for taking time out of your afternoon to be here. And it was an awesome pleasure to interview Deborah, your wife, last week. So, thank you for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Al, thank you. Thanks for having me on. You guys had an awesome conversation. I didn't hear it all yet, but I was just looking forward to dropping in on a conversation with you. So it's gonna be
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, well, we had a really good one before we started recording. I'm like,
We
man,
did.
we're missing a lot of good stuff here. So let our listeners know just a little bit about you and what got you started, and then let's tap into how our words can open doors.
Absolutely. So when I was 18, I got into real estate right out of high school. I was really fortunate to have a grandfather that mentored my older brother and I at a very young age. So 12, 13, 14 years old. It's about the time my dad lost his job. And so I saw kind of my dad get fired from the corporate world. And then I was like, well, if that's what the corporate world does to my dad, I want nothing to do with it. So I kind of made this decision around 11, 12 years old to go right into entrepreneurship. And my grandfather mentored and coached, me around that kind of environment. So I was very fortunate to be listening to Jim Rohn and Brian Tracy and Zig Ziglar and Tony Robbins, listening to the old cassettes that most young people have no clue even existed. uh, VHS videos as well. And so he said, my grandfather said, give me 30 minutes a day, and you give me 30 minutes a day to work on yourself, personal growth and development, and I'll buy you, whatever you want. I wanted a mountain bike later on. And so I think that motivation of just being mentored, my grandfather, I come from a background of, farmers and just very smart, intelligent PhDs, masters, my dad, my grandfather. And he said college alone isn't going to be enough to be successful in business. And he said you're going to need to do personal growth and development and work on yourself and work harder on yourself than you do your job or your business. And it was so true that I got that foundation at a young age, because it was like sports kept me in high school. And as soon as I graduated, I was like, I'm out of here. I'm done with this. I didn't want to beat my body up anymore. I wanted to get right into business. Nobody in my family was in real estate. And so I just said, real estate seems like this great avenue. And I think a lot of the people I was listening to, Tom Hopkins, so many people started in real estate and then created public speaking or inspirational type businesses. Um, and that was kind of my start right into business. The first few years hit an early level of success in my 20s. Didn't know what I was doing, but I took action. I was very fearless. And then I kind of hit my glass ceiling. And I think a lot of people can relate to the glass ceiling in the corporate world or being an entrepreneur, being a business owner. And I just was like, gosh, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do it longer, harder, better, faster. That's what I need to do, is work harder, make more calls, hire more people. And then that didn't work either. And I realized that I had my own internal mechanisms and blocks and just all kinds of stuff going on. My limitations, false beliefs, all these things that were really kind of just holding me back. I'd hire a bunch of agents and I'd make the same amount of money I did the year before. I'd work longer and harder hours, then I'd make less money. And so I hired a coach like you had mentors, and I hired a coach, Rhonda. And at the time, she was doing about 30, somewhere between 25 and 30 million a year. And I said, there's something she's doing different. I'm going to listen to this woman. She knows what she's talking about. She opened up her business in a box to me, but I got so much more than just like templates and processes and business coaching, which is what a lot of us think we need. It's what I thought I needed. She said, Brandon, your business is actually pretty fine, pretty good. She's like, you're the problem in your business. And it was just that smack. And I needed that. I was 24, 25. Um, and when she said that, I realized she's right. It was like the first time of getting honest, so honest with yourself, looking in the mirror and saying, she is 100% right. I don't know exactly what that means, but she's absolutely correct. It was like the first level of taking radical self responsibility for me and realizing I need to accept the problems and the challenges that I've created. Yes, I've created success and I can accept that responsibility. But I think the hardest part for a lot of us is where do we need to take responsibility that we're not? And
Right.
she was that moment for me. Because of what I had done is I'd gotten away from my personal growth and development that my grandfather Pop Up had taught me at a young age, right? So I got in the grind and the hustle of business that so many of us get into, life. And she's like, take these NLP trainings. And I was like, that's so funny because I used to listen and read NLP books. And so it was kind of like coming full circle for me of what, I started with, went away from, and coming back full circle. So I took these trainings, and within my first training breakthrough event, I just was like literally looking at all the areas of my life that I was not being honest with myself. Number one was my health. I'd let my health go, gained some weight. I was drinking too much. I was smoking. I was doing all kinds of unhealthy stuff. Wasn't getting good sleep because I was so stressed out. I was in an unhealthy relationship. I was actually engaged to a woman that we just had a toxic. When it was on, it was really beautiful and it was on. When it was off, it was a drag out, knock down, throw shit at the wall. I mean,
Right.
it was rough. Um, and so I looked at that and I realized a lot of my emotional eating and my drinking habits had come from not addressing the relationship that I was in. And then on top of that, having the stress of business and money and trying to hire people and be a better leader. And so I really went with the intention to these events, these trainings, to be a better leader, step up, be a better manager to my people, and really grow my business, right? Serve my clients at a deeper level. Um, and right after that event, I went back to my ex or my fiance at the time, and I said, "Hey, why don't you take these trainings with me? Like, I think this would help us get aligned, better relationship, better health." And she said, "You drank the Kool-Aid." She's like, "I want nothing to do with this stuff." And this was after a knockdown, drag out fight. She threw the ring at me. I caught it. I kept it. I walked out. I remember driving out of that house, and I said, "I'm never coming back." And I made this that was kind of part of the title of just your words. I made this literally commitment to myself, of just certainty that my life isn't going to change unless I leave this toxic relationship. And I said, if I upset somebody that much, that's probably not healthy for her, and it's definitely not healthy for me. And
Yeah.
so that was kind of the start of my breakthrough. Went through this training. Within 90 days of breaking up with her and getting through the first event, I made $100,000 in about 60 days. I put $100,000 of commissions in escrow and then closed all that. And I hadn't made that kind of money ever. I mean, it was like what would take me 6, 7 months. I did it in literally a 90 to 60-day period. So I got really clear with the language and the self-talk that was going on inside. I didn't realize, I think, how negative it was because I repressed a lot of it. So I started to clear that out and then just be very still in my thinking. I was already confident, but I still had these blocks. So that's where, these trainings just rewired my subconscious, my non-conscious mind. And I look back, what's funny, I was going to my next level 2 training and I said, I need a better, hotter, younger Deb, a better, hotter, younger Deb. My ex fiance, her name was Deb. And then when we were in that event, I looked over my left shoulder and I saw this beautiful thing back here. And I look over and I went to shake her hand and on her name tag, it said Deborah. I was like, Deborah, Debbie? And she's like, you can call me whatever you want. And that's my now wife, that you just interviewed. And it was too surreal of like, wow, I literally attracted a better, hotter, younger Deb. That was, and that's the thing. Words mean things. Like if
Oh
you
yeah.
cast spells to the universe, at some point they will come true. And so we're very, very conscious of the language we use. And so that was literally one of the ways I manifested. And I started to manifest so many things in my life because I changed my language. I changed the way I spoke to myself and the way I spoke and communicated to others.
Yeah. And the words, I mean, my gosh, it's crazy that you just mentioned this because last night, as I was telling you before we started recording, I went to dinner last night with a gentleman by the name of Pete, and he's with Bad Bet Productions and Utah Business Spotlight. And he and I had worked together a little bit on a show and some things. And the co-founder of the Healing Utah Success Summit, she's out of St. George. Her and her boyfriend drove up, and we all went out to dinner because she did a recording at his place too. And my co-founder, she's in her 30s, same age as my daughters, just a go getter, has a huge heart. And she's asking a lot of questions, and she said the word try and having to and stuff like that. And I remember Pete goes, what do you mean try? And I just stopped her in her tracks, and she goes, well, I'm trying to do this. He goes, no, you're not trying. He says, are you going to do it? Are you doing it, or are you not doing it? And then he started explaining. He says, try to move this table. Just try to move this table. And she's like, what? He's like, try to move the table, the dinner table. Just try. She's like, I'm not getting it. So he was trying to get her to open up. And we mentioned last night too about the words that follow I am follow you. And it was so cool because she literally sat there at the dinner table and was just crying. And she goes, I had no clue that how much our words can affect us. And it's like, my gosh, I think there's a book called Word I Am Word, and it talks about that. And I had one of my good friends point that out to me too. He stopped me once when we were having a conversation. He goes, Al, can I speak openly to you? And I said, yeah, you bet, Matt. What's up? He goes, you know how many times you just said try in 5 minutes? I'm like, no, I have no clue. He said 15 times. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me?
That's a lot.
So that's what started opening my eyes too, of learning that we've got to be careful how we use our words. I've been working really hard on getting certain words out of my vocabulary, even the word belief, because I think I said it last week with your wife. The word lie is in belief, and so I do my best I like to say my version, because it doesn't mean that my belief is better than your belief or vice versa, because it's just been how we were raised or what's happened in our life, or how we look at things. But anyway, yeah,
Sure.
words are very, very powerful. And somebody else got me once too when they asked me what I did, and I says, well, I'm working on being a public speaker. And they're like, no, you said that wrong. When people ask you, you say, I am a public speaker. And I was like, oh, okay. So it's been great to have certain people in your life that come into your life when you start realizing it's time to change your life, because real quick here, because I don't want to take away your stuff, but I lost a 24-year career in 2009. I spent 8 years snorting cocaine and drinking every weekend. It was a Friday and Saturday night thing. During the week, never touched it.
Hmm.
Friday came, man, it was time to let loose and party for 2 days. Sunday, I'd get my shit together, clean myself up. Hadn't been drug tested in 15 years, got drug tested, lost my job. Somebody
Wow.
called me and said, Al, you were known around the shop as a liar and a manipulator. I said, you're so full of shit. Come on. And he's like, okay, man, I'm just letting you know. And it stuck with me. And I really started doing some deep thinking. And I went, no, he's right. That's exactly who Al Richards is. I was 198 pounds. I was someone who always worked out, took care of themselves. I used to bodybuild. I used to compete in bodybuilding in my mid 30s. Here I've got a double chin. I couldn't see my toes if I looked down because I was too busy snorting cocaine and drinking every weekend. That was my release from a stressful job. One of my excuses, right? The other was things in my past that I did not realize I was carrying into my future. And I didn't know which direction to go. And once I decided first thing that I knew how to start was get back into fitness. And I started losing my weight and started changing how I thought. And
What
finally,
was your previous career?
I was in manufacturing. So I worked in the maintenance department. I had 43 employees underneath me. I
Wow.
had five departments I was over, plus the property maintenance outside, and it was just the parts room. I just had a lot on my plate, and yeah. So as I started changing my mindset, and I hit my knees for the first time since I was probably 13, and here I am. I was in my mid 40s at the time, and I knelt at the side of my bed. To me, it felt like a half hour. All I know is when I got up, my sheets were soaking wet because I was just bawling. And I'm like, I asked for help. This was not the help I was looking for. Where do I go? And poof, I get emotional even thinking about it. God just started putting those chess pieces right in front of me. And I started meeting amazing people. And you said something here just a little bit ago, even like with your grandpa, when you surround yourself with like-minded people, you start becoming like them, and you literally do start changing, and your life starts opening up and so much light starts coming through the door.
Absolutely. It really is. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Um, it just the environment. I think environment is big. Um, I was around a group of men. Once I met Deb, she really shined the light on a group of guys that on the outside they were successful, made money, but then, they're cheating on their wives. We would party, the drugs would come out, the drinking, and that kind of led to more of that unconsciousness. Like, that's how it started really. And I realized like she's like, do you want to be around those types of friends? And I realized that's not going to help me live up to my highest potential. And I think so many people, I think that's one of the biggest things. Environment. When Deb and I first met, she's like, I'd gone back and forth. I was living in California at the time. We met. She was in Vegas. We met at our level two in July of 2013. And she's like, I just don't want to do this. I hate this career. She was a stripper and she was doing sex work. And I said, listen, if you really want to change, I was like, move to California, move in with me and get out of that environment. I said, I don't know if this is going to work. I had no clue. I mean, we'd only known each other for about 2 or 3 months. It was quick.
Wow.
And I said, if you really want to change, you have to leave. You have to be willing to leave that old life and have the courage to leave that old life. And that's how I know is like the reason why I've seen so many people have these huge breakthroughs in our trainings and retreats and, or with a coach, right? And then what that happens is they go back into their old environment and it's like quicksand. It just kind of sucks them back in because people that really well, typically friends, family, they're like, yeah, I still see you, Al, as the old you. They don't see the new version of who we are inside because the belief systems, your values, your attitude, your habits, your traumas, all that stuff can shift internally. And it takes time for us to sometimes see it on the outside, see the behavior change. Sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's instantaneous, but sometimes it takes 5, 6 months. Sometimes it takes a year of transformation, or a few. And so that's what I've seen with people, but Deborah was willing to have the courage to change the way she was willing to change her life. She was like, I'm willing to completely leave my friends and the people that I know that are comfortable, that it's certain she was willing to leave those behind. And I applaud anybody who does that because it's super risky. It's
Mhm.
scary as hell. It's unknown. And yet it's the first step to commitment. And I think if you want to change, you have to commit to yourself first and say, I'm committed to this. Like, I don't know what the hell's going to happen, but I'm certainly committed to not living this way. And I think that's what it truly takes. And I was committed to myself when I said, I am not going to, marry this gal. What I actually did was I kind of was doing this meditation and I floated out 5 years. This is before, I met Deborah. And it was just divorce, divorce, divorce. Like I literally saw that image. I didn't know exactly, it wasn't like super clear, but it was like, it's going to be a mess. And that's when I knew the fighting that we've been going through and all this stuff. That's when I was like, yeah, I need to get out of this toxic relationship. And I think because I committed to that, that's the reason why like I met my queen, because I wanted to meet someone that was my equal, to be on stage with and to build my empire. And sure as heck, she showed up, almost within 5 months of me committing to that, and then really changing my life, getting my finances together, making my business happen, getting my health together. I lost 42 pounds within 90 days, 60 days, somewhere in there. My older brother, I'm 40, he'll be 45 in March. We have a great relationship, both into business, both entrepreneurs, both didn't go to college. And he called me out when he came back. He's like, bro, he's like, you're fat. He's like, what happened to the stud jock that I knew, played volleyball, water polo, basketball? He's like, what happened? And I flew out to Austin, and we worked out for 30 days, and I literally lost 12, 15 pounds in 30 days. I mean, like, my body knew what to do. It's just, I wasn't the discipline of doing it. And also, I wasn't even drinking as much as I was before. Um, but we worked out every day, and I tell you, the weight shed off. I got my confidence back, and I think that's something really powerful for men, is getting out of the environment and getting your confidence back. And like you did, it's that health piece. If you don't look good, you don't feel good,
Yeah.
and if you don't feel good, you're sure as hell not going to want to look good, right? So it's kind of like this vicious cycle that we get caught up in. So that's what I did. I changed my physical. I really did. I changed my physical appearance, and then my mental and emotional confidence came back almost instantaneously. Um, and I think that's something that a lot of men struggle with, that I've coached, is they don't realize how damaging they are to themselves, but they also don't realize how they're in a toxic relationship that they're not admitting they are in one, and they're not addressing the elephant in the room to say, hey, honey, can we stop yelling at each other? Can we
Yeah.
stop throwing shit at each other? Like, when is that going to stop? Yeah, at some point you got to get conscious and say, I'm not happy. And that's what I did, is I was like, I am not happy in this relationship, which allowed me to change.
You, that's a very tough one, like you said. I lost my wife last April, and she battled alcoholism for quite a long time, and I stood by her for 8, 9 years that she went through it. And then she got 2.5 years sober. And then the day before my 60th birthday, she relapsed, and this time the claws got in her pretty deep. One of my buddies told me once, he goes, because she ended up becoming homeless. And I remember I'd go out and I'd find her and I'd bring her back, because I'd feel so bad. I still loved this woman. I still knew she was inside. The person I fell in love with, I knew she was still inside there. Even for me at that time, I didn't know how to help her. A lot of us don't on the other side. We're so lost. We get so angry and we say things we wish we wouldn't have never said. And we don't realize that, you talked about making that first step, but they have to make that decision first to make that first step, right?
Yep.
And it was so tough because one of my buddies said, I can always tell when you're around her. And I'm like, how? He goes, your whole attitude changes every single time, and it was so bad in 2019. I was on my way home from a networking group, and I had made my mind up. I'm going to go home and get my pistol, and I'm going to go up to the mountains that I call my church, and I'm going to take my life because I can't deal with it anymore. Can't handle coming home to it anymore. And luckily, a phone call saved me that day because
Wow.
when we hung up the call, I saw my screenshot with my 2 daughters and my 3 grandkids, and I just broke down, and started bawling, and just like, this is ridiculous. Something's got to change here. And luckily it did. That shift just right then and there, things kind of started moving in a different direction. But it's hard to pull away from things, and I did not like the word codependent. People would say, well, you're codependent. And I'm like, the hell if I am. Well, I realized I was.
Sure.
I was so codependent, and she was on me as well. And I felt like I was still that knight in shining armor, right? I still had to be there to save her, not realizing that she wasn't willing at the time to do that for herself. And we have to make that tough decision, just like Deb did with her friends, and probably yourself as well, and which I did back in 2009. I had to pull myself away from everything that I knew, and I had to go in somewhere different. And it was tough. It was really, really tough. And losing her. I mean, the blessings come out of it, right? I mean, we get so many things out of our dark moments. There's so many blessings that come out of it. That's what got me to do the podcast was was her addiction, and I hid mine for a long time, and then I finally came out and opened up about it, and just all the stuff that we went through, and that's what got me to get up on stage and start speaking and opening up. And so I look at it as a blessing. However, also at that time, it's a tough decision. It is very
It is.
tough to pull yourself away from something that you're comfortable with but not happy with.
Exactly. Because comfort is pure certainty. And
Mm.
what's fascinating as humans, we would rather have certainty, knowing like I know the pain I'm about to come home to. Like I fucking know that shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's certain it's gonna be there about 6 p.m. every day. That certainty is more safe than the unknown. And
Mhm.
that's what I find fascinating is and I had the same thing too, Al. I had my uncle, my mom's brother, really helped shine that light. We had gone out to dinner and that night, it was like right before he happened to be in town from Pennsylvania. And he's like, hey, I got you a book. And he handed me this codependent book, codependency. I was like, that's fascinating. Codependency. Let me check that shit out. Started reading it. Uh, Makes sense. So that was another wake up call of right before that breaking off that engagement. Um, and honestly, the tough, like if anyone's in that type of relationship, I'm not saying go break up with someone, and you just have to ask yourself, how honest are you being? Because for some people, my brother just recently went through divorce. For some people, they're not honest with themselves because they don't know themselves. Like they don't truly know who they are yet. And it's because of habits and patterns and behaviors like codependency, playing small, playing safe. And so when someone, kind of attaches to someone else, I call it the backpack. It's like when you're networking and you find, you see all the same people networking sometimes, and you see the person that's super introverted and they're like, Al, and then they just want to be around you all night because they don't know anybody else, but they got social anxiety,
Yeah.
right? They got that thing that fires on and they want safety. And you want to meet new people you know, and they're like that little backpack that still follows you around. And that's kind of like what it is just this piece of comfort and safety. And all I can say is anyone that's in a relationship that they know in their heart and they trust their intuition, if they could tap into that and truly trust themselves, if it's that unhealthy and that toxic, you got to ask the person, do you want to change? Because when I asked my ex, I was like, hey, do you want to do this with me? Like, I'm not going to force you. I said, I think it'd be a great idea. And I said, we can get healthy, we can get fit, we can get our minds right, we can come together as a relationship aligned in values, right? In communication, in sex, in all the things. And when she said, I want nothing to do with that, and she was a psychology major in school, because a lot of psychologists I find, they think that they don't have the problems, but the problem is the other person, because we've certified a lot of licensed professionals. That was her mindset. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to change that mindset. So I
Yeah.
could have chosen to stay there and play in this shadow and play in this misery and be unhappy as hell? Or am I going to actually leave and go change my life? Because if she doesn't want to do this, where is it in me that doesn't want to change? Because that's what you got to look at, right? Is agency, is like
Yeah.
free will, the power to act and the power to empower yourself. So that's what I ended up doing was when I left that. I tell you, that's when my life really started to shift. I was like it was around 25, 26, somewhere in there. Maybe 20, yeah, 26. I was 26. And I'm just fortunate that I had that, the kind of teaching at 13, 14 years old, because it allowed me to still kind of make that mistake, but then still recover and realize I got to get my shit together. In my 30s, it was incredible. And that's, Deb and I really built a really beautiful life together, and training and just, I love my life. Like I absolutely love my life. I love my wife. I love our life and what we've created
Yeah.
together of transformation and travel and adventure, and we're always helping each other and supporting each other, working on each other to help each other become the highest and best potential. you know that's why I love this work so much.
You guys are helping each other unpack each other's suitcase.
Yeah, for
Right?
sure. For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And it sounds like too to me like you both love yourselves, right? Because again, I was a guest on a podcast, and the host asked me what brought me joy, and this was right around the end of the podcast. And at first I said, well, that's a really good question. I've never been asked that question. Then I thought, no, wait a minute. I've been asked that question before. What's my answer? I've always said, oh my gosh, hiking, spending time with my grandkids, being outside, especially being in the mountains. Like I told you earlier, I call that my church. That's the church God built. No man built that. God built that. And then I stopped, and all of a sudden I started getting tears in my eyes. And I said, you know what? For the very first time, what brings me joy, I can say for the first time in my life, I'm in love with Al Richards. I love who I have become, and I love the individual that I am today. And since I've been able to feel this way about myself, I've realized how much more love I can give to others and how that love resonates more back to me. So when we do love ourselves and we love our lives, no matter where it is at that time, and just be grateful for it, I think we just don't see it. We don't know it. We don't understand it. The 3D world has programmed us so much to look at life in a certain way. And I'll share something really quick. Kids nowadays are extremely smart. And I'm talking at least the ones that I know from about the ages of 14 down. And I say that because that's my grandkids. My oldest granddaughter's 14, my youngest granddaughter's 11. She'll be 12 in March. Grandson is 11 or 9. I
They're
pick up
coming in super brilliant. They're coming in with some serious
oh,
like awareness and like old souls, right?
very old souls, and that's
Like
what
what the
I'm
hell's going
getting
on
to.
here?
I pick up my daughter, and her husband had some things going on. She's like, Dad, we don't have time. We've got this happening. We got happening. All the kids are in soccer, and my son-in-law's an attorney, and they got so many things happening. She said, do you have time to pick up Lila and take her to her soccer game, and we could pick her up and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, I got time. I'd be more than happy to. So I go and pick her up, and I'm bringing her over to my place, and we got talking, and all of a sudden the conversation about bad things happening. And all of a sudden, that little girl, 11 years old, goes, Papa. I said, what, sweetie? She goes, life would be boring if we didn't have bad things happen to us. And I went, what? She goes, well, how would we ever learn? How would we ever figure things out? And I'm going, holy shit. I'm
Wish
talking
I
to
knew
an
that at
11-year-old here, right?
wish I knew that at 18.
Right. No kidding. And her and I, the rest of the way home, sat and had this adult conversation about how life is and how problems and darkness can bring blessings. And I mean, I called my daughter and I'm like, what the hell are you teaching these kids? Because you guys are doing a damn good job. She goes, Dad, they're just figuring it out. She
Crazy.
goes, they're paying attention and they're just seeing things. And when something happens, they ask us, which they're not afraid to ask their mom and dad, which is great because I was always afraid of asking my mom and dad anything, and it was so cool to see that. And I'm like, you know what?
Amazing.
Eckhart Tolle wrote a book, The New Earth. And my version is these kids nowadays, these younger ones, they're the beginning of the new earth because of how they look at life and how they look at things around them, and also how much love they have to share. Anyway, that's my version of it.
There's definitely a spiritual frequency. I agree. I've met some 14-year-olds, some 15-year-olds, some 12-year-olds. I'm just like, wow, like I mean, I think the parents are doing a great job, and there's something spiritual that's unexplainable about the frequency that they're coming in with, like just like ancient wisdom, like a
Yes.
maturity that I'm like, I didn't even have that at 18. How the hell do you have this at 14, like 13 years old? I think it's really cool because it shows it definitely is showing us an evolution of like our youth, but it's also showing an evolution of like humanity because
Hmm.
we are raising this consciousness. There is an involvement and evolving of our consciousness that I think is it's necessary, and I think it's happening. And that's really cool. And like I love nature. Like that's my spiritual church too. I love being outside. When I was young, I was always outside, and I'd rather be outside than inside, to be honest. And that's the place where I can find probably the most peace,
Yeah.
connection.
I'm with you on that one. What are your thoughts on this question? Because I feel So many individuals out there feel this way. What are your thoughts on someone else's expectations of you?
You know, the one thing I feel like I know myself now more than I ever did. I had this incredible experience in Egypt where it was a true spiritual download connection, soul connection to Osiris and the Osiris energy. Um, and it's not my responsibility to care what other people think about me. And I think that's something that even early on, I had that in real estate because I just for whatever reason, I just people would say things. I probably didn't take in enough feedback when I was younger because I just brush it off like, yeah, I don't care what you think. There's some good to that, some really good to that because I think a lot of people care more about what other people think than what they think of themselves. And it's just I look at it as it's just not my responsibility to focus on what people think of me because no matter what I've done with team members, with my friends, with family, it's like I could be the perfect person, what I think is perfect. Somebody's still going to not like what I did. And I mean, we've done videos, we've done podcasts, like we're like, man, we crushed that. We post it, you see great comments. And then there's like that one, right? That's just like, what hole did you crawl out of? Like, the dude that just woke up or the negative Nelly. And it's just like, what, there's always somebody you can't please. And I think if there's anything we've learned by doing the work we do, holding ourselves accountable, being on stage, in a room of 100 people, there's always going to be a couple people that just no matter who you are, even if you're at your most authentic frequency, sharing your story, you're going to piss somebody off because they're not authentic and you trigger them.
Mm-hmm.
Deb's done this with women. Women have come up to her after the events and been like, "You're too much for me. You share your story around stripping and sex and all this stuff, and you guys are too real and too raw, and I don't like it." Right? And this gal happened to be very religious, so she was probably trying to figure that out.
Right.
And we're like, "Thank you." She's like, "I want to learn NLP, but not from you guys." Right? We've had people say that and that's great. There's different folks for different strokes for different folks. And I think that's the thing is like find your coach, find your trainer, find your mentor, find somebody that you align with. The thing that we know we all really benefit from and need, and I don't normally like to say need, but I think it is a need in this society right now, is personal growth and spiritual development. People
Absolutely.
must work on themselves, whether it's reading a book a week, right? Going to seminars, going to classes, whatever that is. I think the biggest piece is how much are you working on yourself? Because I believe this, not finishing school. I went to City College in Fresno, California for like maybe 10 months. I dropped out within the first year, just under the year. And it's not enough to be successful. College is not enough to be successful. I see a lot of people that money is all they have, but they're poor. And some people I see they have no money, but they're very wealthy in their relationships. They're wealthy in how they feel and they're happy. And I know doctors and attorneys and all that stuff, they need, you know, whatever degrees, but I think we've put too much ownership on the paper that's the certification on the wall that presupposes success. And I don't think that's success in my mind. In my
Yeah.
world, that's not success. That's not to say you can't get a great job and make money but to me, I also look at that's living in this matrix. And there's a lot of people that are plugged into this matrix. And I think they're afraid of if they unplug, what would that look like? Again, back to uncertainty. My dad, PhD, master's, and when he left the corporate world, they kind of pushed him out. I was 11. And so I saw like, it's kind of that book, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I saw like money and then I saw like no money going through high school. And so that motivated me. In fact, I look back, that's back to your granddaughter. That's the best thing that ever happened to me because I started doing odd jobs. I started painting, doing construction, handyman work. I started getting dirty because I wanted to make money. I saw mom and dad kind of struggling and they didn't communicate it. They didn't really know how to communicate it to us. But again, energetically, we're in the field, we're in the family. Like, hello, it's pretty damn obvious. We know what's going on, even though you're 11, 12, 13 years old. And then about then is when my grandfather started mentoring us, my brother and I. My sister didn't really take on to it, my twin sister. Um, And what's fascinating is right before that, my sister and I got held back in the second grade.
Mm,
So I also kind of grew up with this chip on my shoulder. You know, we had done second grade and then they brought us together in the same classroom in the second grade. And that was like fucking trauma. Oh my gosh, you want to talk about that? It was like she's like in the back of the room, like choking me out. And you know, the teacher, she was a beautiful teacher. She was a great teacher. I just don't think she knew how to handle us. But the one thing she did, she gave me assignments because I knew if I focused on my sister, that was going to be a mess. And so she would be like, "Hey, you know, go help this kid over here, and you know, this kid has some learning challenges. I want you to help them read." And like, she really was instrumental about helping us redirect our focus, which I think is everything in life. You know, if you focus on the shit, you're going to find more shit. Right?
yeah.
If you focus on good stuff, you're going to find a way to find the good in everything. And I think that's really like back to we need problems. And I look back to some of these, you know, challenges in my life. I just look at them as, I think high performers find traumas and convert traumas to challenges, right? Whether it's drinking, whether it's overcoming an addiction, whether it's getting held back, having a parent struggle, and then that created financial struggle for the whole family. Those are moments in my life I look at as that created such adversity and such resilience that it
Yeah.
allowed me to be a business owner at 18 years old and build my real estate company, you know, and then hit another glass ceiling. And you just keep hitting glass ceilings, you keep hitting blocks and obstacles, and that's what makes us better. You know, I think human beings we are so freaking resilient. We're so resilient. And I think most people don't even tap into like 80% of their resilience.
Yeah. I agree. And I don't think a lot of us understand how much of that we have, seriously, because
For sure.
even with what happened to me, Brandon, with losing a 24-year career and going in the direction it led me to where I'm at, like, Steve Jobs says, connect the dots backwards in your life, and you're going to see you're exactly where you're supposed to be at this very moment, which is spot on. However, when something tragic really happens to you, you know, really quick to share it. So I had a below the knee amputation in March of last year.
Oh, wow.
And then, of course, 4 weeks after that, I lost my wife. And I remember when I first heard that I could lose my leg, the thoughts that went through my head, right? I mean, even my daughter was with me and she held my hand. She goes, "Dad, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Hell, I'm just trying to process what the hell was just said to me." I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm not going to hike again. I'm not going to kick the soccer ball with my grandkids again. I'm never going to be able to drive my truck again. Who's going to want a 60-year-old, a 60-something-year-old with an amputated leg?" I mean, it's just all this negative shit which just started just going through my head. And it took me some time, and all of a sudden I stopped and I realized God just handed me a blank piece of paper and a pen, and I can write whatever fucking story I want to write. And I'm going to choose to write a better story. And I still had my time, right? I remember times in waking up in the hospital after my amputation, looking down, I'd just be bawling, right? I'm missing a part of me that's been with me for 60 something years that I abused with all my sports and everything, and then I'd get that mind shift. And I said it at the beginning of the show when I was thanking our sponsors. My coaches helped me so much with understanding how this brain works. And it really helped me to get through. I had resilience in me. I had no clue I had in me. It was just making that decision to go, this is not what's going to happen. And how I shared fitness with you after I lost my job. Uh, Third day or so I was there, the physical therapist come up and I have to go walk down the hall, and I'm on a walker and they got the little strap around me to hold me in case I fall, and I'm hopping on one leg with this walker. And I remember the second day, get in the room and I asked my physical therapist, I said, "Do you have any weights down in the physical therapy room?" She goes, "Like what kind of weights?" I'm like dumbbells, 5 or 10 pounds. She goes, "Yeah, yeah, we probably have some of those." And I said, "Could you bring two up to my room?" And she's like, "Yeah, I could probably do that." And about an hour or so later, she comes in and she's got these two 10-pound dumbbells, like what you used to be able to buy at Kmart, right? Real cheap looking type ones.
Yeah.
She sets them at the edge of my bed. I remember the next morning I woke up, same thing, Brandon. I wake up, I look down. I'm missing my leg. I start bawling. I start feeling sorry for myself. But I allowed my emotions to go through their course. And then I went, okay, I'm done. I lowered my bed, was able to reach down and grab the weights, and I worked my way off to the edge of the bed and I started doing dumbbell curls. And I love telling this story because my nurse walks in and she opened up and she literally her jaw just hit the floor and she's like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I says, "I'm working out. I can't go to the gym, so I brought the gym to me." She goes, "I've been nursing for 20 something years and I've never seen anybody work out in their hospital room before." And I says, "Look, this is something for me that I have to do to keep this where I want it to go. Because if not, I am going to sit here and start feeling sorry for myself, and it's going to grab a hold of me and it's going to take me down before I even realize it. And I'm not going to allow that to happen." And so I've seen so many things like this happen since I've lost my job in 2009. So many people that tragedy has happened to them, but they've pulled that resilience out of nowhere. It's like it was just waiting to come out.
That's an
And
incredible story, Al.
come out
Yeah.
on top. I mean, just look at Deborah, right? Look what kind of
Yeah.
life she had, and she pulled this resilience out of nowhere and just took off. You did the same thing, and there's so many people that I've surrounded myself with that have done that. And we tease each other quite a bit because they're like, "Al, you inspire me so much." And I'm like, "Well, you inspire me." So we're inspiring each other to keep moving and keep doing better and keep helping each other unpacking their own suitcases, and we're all becoming better for it.
Absolutely. That's why, like, I think sharing your story, everyone, anyone that has that story, they think, oh, no one needs to hear mine, but that's how we heal.
Yeah.
Like that's how we even know about history, first of all, is stories are passed down, and like, I mean, you've been through the shit, Al. Like that's part of helping people heal because just when you think it's the worst, you're through the worst of it, maybe something else happens, but you know what? Then there's somebody else that's like 5 times worse, and you're just like, holy shit, right? When I hear your story, I'm like, gosh, that's incredible, right? Just the sheer inspiration and the motivation to keep going. People need to be in that environment, right? In this book I'm reading right now, maybe just think of it, 10x is easier than 2x. When you think about setting your goals and whatever you want to do, whether it's health, whether it's relationship, money, business, career, if you take that goal that you're currently at or the goal that you've set and then times it by 10, it literally forces you into this mode of sheer focus. That's like, what am I going to shed that I can't do in order to create this 10x goal? Because it's so big, it's so impossible, right? It's even the littlest of things, like it literally will help you shed and stop making excuses and reasons for why you're not doing it, right? Or why you're not doing the other thing. And I think of that. It's like, you know, um, there's just so many situations where if you want to change, it's not immediately obvious. You have to change. And so if you want to gain something, you got to lose something.
Yeah.
What are you willing to lose? Is it a behavior? Is it a long time friendship that's been holding you back for decades? Right? Is it this habit, this emotional eating thing? Is it toxic relationships? Is it not setting boundaries? Is it blowing up on your friends and family because you're so fucking angry? Right? And a lot of men are angry. Um, and I think it's also the capacity to handle more stress. I think stress is good, it keeps the body moving. But if you're just sitting around saying, oh my God, I'm depressed and I'm stressed, like that means we have a greater capacity to handle more. And what's preventing us from being able to handle more? That's something we help a lot of new business owners and coaches out with, practitioners. They get into business from themselves, right? They leave the corporate world, but they don't realize the corporate world is this very safe, comfortable place. They tell you when to come to work, what to do, when to do it, when to leave. Don't do it like that. Do it like this. And then when you get into business for yourself, you're like, I'm free, right? And the whole reason why you left the corporate world is to be free with no structure. And then you're like, fuck, I got to get to work. What do I do? It's like the freedom is so big. You're like, should I do a podcast today? Should I go to the gym? Like you got all these options, right? And like so many people go, and then they get in that mode of like damn, I actually am not doing as much as I could do, right? And that's that capacity to do more because I can handle so much more in a day than I could 5 years ago, right? I know you can too. So many of us can. It's like, and I look back at my real estate days when I thought I was so busy, so exhausting. So one of the worst things you could say is I'm so busy. Busy is bullshit. Busy is looking busy, right? How productive is that busyness? And sometimes that's where I think the hardest jump to make is W-2 employment employer to this entrepreneurship world because it's this jump of nobody tells you what to do, when to wake up, how to set that discipline, get your schedule together, and there's a whole set of skills and habits and behaviors that have to be built in order to become that new person, which again, you have to let go of something. You gotta just say, I'm not going to do this anymore because it's not worth my time or it takes too much of my energy, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's a big piece.
Yeah.
Capacity to handle more.
And you're 100% right on that one that you got to give up something to gain something. I've got a good friend by the name of Bill Scheffenhauer. He 2002 silver medalist in the bobsled. He's got a hell of a story, hell of a story. At age 6, he was sandwiched in between his mom and whatever boyfriend she had at the time doing drive-by shootings, and then they'd all go back home and smoke pot or snort cocaine. And this guy's 6 years of age, and wanted to be in the Summer Olympics with track and field, blew out his ankle and thought all the dreams. And anyway, I met with him a long time ago when we was just first kind of starting all this stuff out, and I had first met him. And I remember having breakfast with him one day, and he goes, "Al," he says, "You know what I've just done?" And I'm like, "What?" He says, "I got rid of everything." I'm like everything? He goes, "Everything, even my old clothes. I got rid of all of it." I'm like, "What the hell did you do that for?" And he goes, "I realized I had to get rid of all this shit to start a new beginning. You can't start a new beginning with your old shit. You just can't." And I went, "My gosh, wow, this is very interesting." I found it very interesting. Now, today, he is a very successful business owner. He's got 3 or 4 businesses that he's doing. He has the Olympia Speaks. He's been on my show a couple times. He was on my show when I had my studio, and then one time when I didn't. And it's just really cool to see how he got that figured out. And of course, he surrounded himself around the right type of people. We have a mutual friend by the name of Brett who has a karate shop in Cottonwood Heights, and he's very successful. I mean, this guy, you look at this guy and I mean, you wouldn't want to piss him off. He'd put you down within a nanosecond, But
Yeah.
he's just a really nice, soft-hearted, really, really nice guy. Bill got in contact with him, and he started working with him about the discipline and everything. And Bill got himself all back in shape. Almost kind of like what he was when he was the Olympian. And it's so cool that you mentioned that about how you got to get rid of some certain things to make that change. And I think even on our podcast with your wife, we talked about that fear. We're so afraid of that unknown, and someone like me that lost a 24-year career and decided I wasn't going to go back to work for corporate America ever again and not even knowing what direction I was even going to go.
Yeah.
I mean, I was kind of
Well, and
forced.
losing a leg too, like that to me, like that's a whole nother, like when you said you were processing, I mean, that's a whole nother level of like, you're going to reach down deep and you're going to pull up some resources, Al, you didn't know you had. And I think that
Yeah.
goes for every single one of us. We've got some resources. We got a bucket down deep that it's like when life gets like that low and that challenging, there's a bucket of resources there. I think there's no unresourceful people, just unresourceful states. And if you're in an environment that's unresourceful because of the people, that's the reason why you're unresourceful. It's because you're still around unresourceful thinking people who also believe less than you. Right. And we got to shift that. I mean, that's a powerful story. Like it made me think I saw something recently. A guy was like climbing a mountain with no legs. He literally lost both his legs. And I'm big into mountaineering. Like I love hiking and mountaineering and stuff. And he had this like, you know, down at his nubs, he kind of had this garter thing and he's climbed rocks, he's climbed mountains. Like it's incredible. And it makes me think of Nim's Persia. I don't know if you've seen 14 Peaks on, I think it's on Netflix.
Mm-mm.
Deb and I've seen it so many times. It's crazy. 14 Peaks is, there's 14 8,000 meter peaks all through Pakistan, China, and it's like, all the Himalayas. And Nims Persia, incredible human, he set out to show people what humans can do. And he was a Gurkha in the Nepalese military. Just, he wanted to show also pay respect where respect needed to be paid, which was the Nepalese climbers, the Nepalese Sherpas, all these Western climbers, right? Europeans and Americans and anywhere else that's westernized comes over to climb Mount Everest as an example, right? Or K2 or whatever. And they're like, yeah, I climbed this mountain, but they don't really like recognize the Sherpa that carried their shit up the mountain that risked their life just so you could climb this fucking mountain. And, so he set out to climb 14 8,000 meter peaks. Well, Reinhold Messner, Mesmer did it in, I think it was 16 years it took him to climb all 14 peaks. And Nims wanted to do it in 7 months.
Oh, jeez.
So he announced this to the community of mountaineering, and they thought he was crazy. They said, "You're reckless." They said, "You've lost your nuts, like you've lost your brains. Like, don't do this. Stop." Like, no, it's dangerous. It's reckless. Well, like many times when you're trying to change your life, you're going to have some naysayers. You're going to have some crabs that want to pull you back in the bucket. And
Hmm.
sometimes, unfortunately, it's some of the people that are closest to us. It's the ones we love that sometimes are like the feeding sharks that can shred us. And so he didn't listen to him. And he set out with an incredible, talented team of climbers to go climb these 14 peaks. And he did it in 6 months and 6 days, not to ruin the story for
Jeez.
those that haven't seen it. But I highly recommend that documentary on Netflix. Like, that is a documentary. If you're feeling down and out, you're feeling depressed off your ass, that is the documentary to watch because he's showing humanity what's possible, like your story of just resilience and sheer mental fortitude to go after it. um he said something funny. He had climbed, I think, 8 of the peaks, 7 8 mountains of the 14. I mean, we're talking, by the way, 8,000 meter peaks is like you're above the death zone in the last few thousand meters. Everest is one of them, right? Everest is the tallest mountain in the world. We're talking 31,000 feet. Like, it's insane, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's helicopters that can't go that high.
Yeah.
um, and so he was climbing his eighth mountain, and he gets to base camp, and there's these guys, these climbers that 3, 4 guys had just gotten swept down by an avalanche. And so the camp was just depressed, right? They're just like, oh, we're not going to summit. It's dangerous. The weather conditions, blah, blah, blah. And he gets there and he's all stoked because he's just climbed eight mountains. I mean, like, he's on a roll, which, by the way, I mean, most people don't climb more than one in a year. Like, to be honest, you're lucky if you climb one in 6 months because of weather conditions and timing and all the things, permits, the gear. He gets there, it's depressed. He has a party. He said, tonight we party, tomorrow we plan, and he gets the morale pumped up, gets the energy, gets people inspired. And he sets out to go climb K2, which is like the most dangerous mountain on the planet. I mean, it's just sheer danger. Like, you just never know, like, what can happen on that mountain. And sure as shit, he summits that mountain. On his way down, he's like saving people, by the way. He never traded his morals and his values. Like, he helped people down the mountain despite trying to climb all these, and break a world record, which he broke multiple world records. And he was at the camp trying to explain to guys, and they're like, yeah, we're not really going up there, basically, is their attitude. He said, sometimes when you think you're 100% fucked, you're only 45% fucked. And that's so true in business and life. When you have money shit and you have this and relationship and then health, that's the 45%. Yeah, I can appreciate that. But like, there's 55% that we could tap into, right? There's still 45%, 55% of just pure sheer grit to get shit done. And I think a lot of human beings, we've created a little bit of a soft culture around this, is like, I'm not about like grinding it out until you die, but hey, sometimes you kind of have to grind some shit out in order to be successful, whether it's in your health, whether it's in your business. Like there are times where it is going to take pure sheer focus and resilience, determination. My grandfather taught me perseverance. Plan ahead, do the best you can, but then you adjust for the conditions. And I think that's something that I just love the way Nims Persia, one of my goals is to have him on stage with us sharing his story of these, 14 peaks, because he's just an inspiration. And like, at the end of it all, he's like, if this was Western climbers, we would have had 10 times the media. And he's right. He's right. As a Nepalese climber, there was no, paying respect where respect is due. And I think it was just a really brilliant way by the way, the documentary, I don't think I've seen a better shot documentary. Like this guy's climbing mountains and he's shooting videos with his iPhone, right? I mean, forget about the danger. Like this dude's capturing it all, which
Yeah.
90%, 99% of us never would have done that. I'm like the worst at capturing moments like that, right? And it's just, I think it's just so cool to see him unfold this story. And now he's created, I think it's called elite mountaineering or something. And he's created, like, you can go and pay a couple $100,000 to have him safely take you up the mountain because he knows it better than anyone. And he summited 55 8,000-meter peaks in the last, he did that in 2019 before COVID hit. So like since 2019, he's just on fire, built his team, has a public relations type where he's getting paid to speak now and inspirationally communicate. Like it's awesome. Like
Yeah.
to see that success is just to me that lights me up.
That is incredible. What an incredible story. I'm going to have to check that out
You
and
got to
see.
check it out.
I've never even really heard of him. So thank you for sharing that.
It's ridiculous. I mean, we've brought it into our talks and our training because I just think that building a business is like climbing a mountain, and
Yeah.
climbing a mountain is like building a business. Because when you get to base camp and you get to camp 1, camp 2, camp 3, camp 4, and you think you've summited, and then you got to get down. Oh, fuck, I'm up here. How do I get down from this damn mountain? Right.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
sometimes that's business. You get somewhere and you're like, God, I got to get back. How do I get back?
Yeah. I know that feeling. I did 2 hikes, 3 hikes, and after my amputation, my first two were 2 miles, mile in, mile out. Felt pretty good. And in October, I got a hold of my friend who she usually would go hiking with me, and I says, "Hey, I'm thinking about going on a hike up to Twin Lakes."
Nice.
And I said, "You want to come with me?" And one of my other friends who is also an amputee, but his is on his hands, and so we hooked up and we went, and I made it to the top. We went over to Lake Solitude area and then up the back side of it, and then because I knew the other side was a little too rough, a lot of rocks and stuff like that. And I'm still working on my stability, right?
Sure.
My balance. But man, coming down when we started going across the boardwalk there at Silver Lake, my friend Ricky, she's like, "Al, are you okay?" And I'm like, "I am just looking forward to getting to the truck, man." It's like I like this one pushed my ass, but I did it, and I had to stop a lot, which was
Right.
hard for me, but I still did it. And I took my baby steps and I went for it, and I paid for it the next day, which was okay. It was only a day after that I was good again. But we celebrate every little peak that we hit, right?
Right.
Told somebody here as we wrap up this show, we're just coming up on the hour, and I've got a clinician's appointment to get to, but somebody was telling me that they reached the top of their mountain. They've been working towards something and they finally reached it. And I says, "Oh my gosh, celebrate it, man. Congratulations. That's awesome." They're like, "Thank you." And they were really excited. And I says, "But don't forget to look behind you." Like, "What do you mean look behind me?" I says, "Because you just hit the bottom of the next one." And he looked at me, he's like, "Oh shit." you know, but
Yep.
like you said earlier, right? With business, it's this. And even with life, it's
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 life.
that same way. I like to call them shit balls. Life is going to throw shit balls at us, and sometimes it hits us square in the face. It stinks, it's nasty, it sucks.
Yep.
However, grab your handy wipes, wipe that shit off,
Yeah.
and just and just keep going. Put some new goggles on or whatever the hell you need to do.
It's
But
totally life, right? Because when you summit one mountain, that's your health. You got to summit another one, and then there's another mountain, and then there's another peak, and then there's another peak, and there's lots of mountains to climb,
yeah,
and I think that's where the going gets tough, and I think having this resilience around your mindset and your emotions, this mental toughness, it's so key. It's so key that people really start to think about not what they think so much, it's how they think and that process of thinking more clearly. Obviously, you got to think positive, you got to think more with abundance, let go of the scarcity, the fear. I think there's just zero place for fear in life. We can be scared, but be aware of danger. But if we live in fear, we're going to just create more problems, more scarcity. And I'd say
Absolutely.
that's one of probably the biggest things that we help people let go of is the fear, the anxiety, because there's just you can't help others if you can't help yourself get through that stuff, right? Especially anxiety. I think that a lot of people suffer from anxiety, and anxiety to me is just projecting the past. It's just a fear of the future. And if you're setting goals and you're just focused on those goals turning out negatively, turning out wrong or badly, that's a fear of the future. And that's all anxiety is. It's just focus on what do you want instead, that negative thing. And I think that's a big piece to it. But yeah, NLP has really helped us just for me, it's helped me with my sales, my language, and just rewiring my mind. And no, it's not something I think everybody has to learn. If somebody's interested in learning it, I think it really does help accelerate growth super quickly, especially if you're already a smart action taking person. You'll find connections very quickly. Like
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
absolutely. Well, Brandon, man, thank you so much for
Thank
taking
you.
time. This has just been an absolute pleasure. I could probably sit down here and just like
Yeah,
you,
we could.
your wife and so many of my other guests, I could sit down for another hour and shoot the
Right.
shit and talk. Unfortunately, I got an appointment to get to, but is there any last thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners?
Um, yeah, I had so many. It was just great to drop in. I love your story, and I thank you for sharing that. I learned something about you, Al, and just the sheer resilience. I love what you're doing with the podcast. Um, I think for a lot of people right now, you kind of mentioned probably more ending on something that's more a serious topic, but there's a lot of men that I think are struggling with mental stuff,
Mm,
considering taking their own life. And I think that's something that, we need to create more community. Um, and I think we need to have more tools. I think a lot of people, like you said, with your wife, if we can train more people and coach people to have these tools that can be more resilient in the moment, we won't have this societal problem of this mental health issue just off the charts. We've got more obesity, more unhealthiness, more overweight people now than ever. We just have a lot of health issues that's stemming from, constructs societally, but also bringing back the empowerment within. And that's what we want to, that's what Deborah and I are doing is helping people know themselves. Because when you know yourself, you would never want to do that to yourself.
yeah,
And I think if we had stronger community, the technology that we've gotten into, I think has really just distanced ourselves. And I think 2020 was I always say 2020, what happened during 2020 was the best thing that happened to us as a society. And, back to like the good. People go,
yeah.
why would you say that, Brandon? It's like it woke so many fucking people up,
Amen.
right? And Deb and I were doing live events all through Austin. We didn't care. Like, you want to talk about not caring about what other people think? We heard so much bullshit around the fear and you can't do that and you got to wear this and you got to do that, and we blocked all that shit out. We really weren't on social media that year a lot, and we did live events, sometimes 40, 50, 60 people in the room, because the energy we were building in that room and the container we were creating of transformation and safety and empowerment and confidence and just bringing people together to help them heal many times their fear and their trauma is is exactly what we're doing. And I think if we can you know um compound that out into the universe, like that's going to help more people get healthier. And that's some of the things that we're really driven on, is this mission to help people get the tools to be self-sustainable, because no one's coming to save us. Like it's not happening. And we want to create self-sustainable human beings that are confident and like want to help themselves, but mostly want to help others too. And I think we got to learn to transmute. And when we can transmute energy and emotions, we can transform, and then we can go help others. And it's kind of like this triangle I see from some teachings from Elder Miguel and Maya that we go and do global retreats at, that are, some spiritual esoteric teachings in these megalithic places like Egypt and Lake Atalan. And And I invite people to just keep learning. If you're a seeker like me, um, go to these places. I see other countries and other cultures, and it just connects me more to the land and nature than ever. And I also am driven to want to learn these ancient ways because it's something that we're adopting and we're kind of coming again full circle back into the way, breath work, meditation. Um, Miguel said to me, don't run, let's walk. And I think we need to get back to being present as a society is like slow down. Let's get present. Let's help each other out. Let's love on one another, you know, and I think we can really kind of create the society we're all looking for. We just have to make our mark on it. And like we got to start. And I think a lot of people they're a little bit afraid to start. You don't have to be great to start. You just have to start to be great.
Yeah. Amen. Thank you for sharing that. I will concur everything you just said. Amen to that. So, Brandon, again, thank you so much. And I just want to say, hey, thank you to, again, our sponsors, Emergo Academy, Dave and Susan Kenny. Love you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you to all our guests, our past guests and future guests. I love and appreciate you guys. And also, most of all, our listeners. You guys are the ones that's keeping this going. I mean, today's 371 episodes, and the show will be 5 years old in March. I'm just still in awe that it's been going on this long, but it's because of you guys, right? And because of the guests. So thank you guys very much. We're gonna leave you with this as we do at the end of every show. Remember, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.